Hey kids, you're about to listen to a comedy podcast. That means that none of this is medical advice. If you need medical advice or medical care, please contact your doctor.
Welcome to the Jock Podcast featuring Dr. London Smith. Who's ready to get turned up on some medical facts? Introducing your host, Dr. London Smith.
Hello, and welcome to the Jock Podcast, where we discuss fitness and health and how to incorporate our modern understanding of science and medicine into our daily lives, but without it being so boring. I'm your host, drlondonsmith.com. I'd like to begin by apologizing to our listeners. We've received some feedback regarding the overuse of complicated medical terminology that I've been using, such as recumbency and baby it's cold outside. So I will try to temper my wording a little more in the future. Here to help with that is our producer Cameron.
Hello, friends.
So Cameron is so dedicated to keeping the Jock Podcast relatable that when he heard about the motion of the ocean, he began to make trips to the ocean in order to capture portions of the ocean in jars, which have begun to fill up every room in his house. So I guess, are you trying to stop the ocean from moving, Cameron? Is that the idea there?
Well, yeah. I mean, I get motion sickness.
Okay,
so I kind of figured that maybe taking a hold of these things and kind of capturing them and sort of facing my fears in that way would sort of, not all of us have good doctors that we can lean on, so we have to come up with our own sort of medical remedies.
So for you, the motion sickness you think is psychological as opposed to, vestibulocochlear.
Oh, no. Sorry. I need to tame the concept of motion so it stops affecting me in such a way. I need to show it who's boss so it leaves me alone.
Right. Okay. So the concept is what you're taming. It's not so much. Okay. I guess motion sickness.
Motion itself is what's being tamed.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's. Well, okay. Also with us is Digital in the house. Baby, it's cold outside. Baby, it's cold outside. Here to help with that is the motion of the ocean. Baby, it's cold outside.
The motion of the ocean. The motion of the ocean. The motion of the ocean.
The motion of the ocean.
And later, Cameron tells me that we can expect a doctor. Is that right, Cameron?
That is correct, Dr. London.
Wow. And so you brought a doctor on board.
An actual, for real, 100% Angus certified doctor.
So what was... You say Angus certified?
Uh-huh.
All right. Well, before I move on, I would like to address a bit of listener feedback. So I had this note. I found it whenever I walked out of the hospital. I looked at my lab coat, and on the inside, this was written in Sharpie. And I think, from what I understand, a listener was trying to reach me and kind of leave some feedback. Quote from the note, Father said this day would come. We need to sell our worldly possessions and go to the holy place. End quote. So, first of all, thank you to that listener for reaching out to us here at the Jock Podcast. We always love to hear back from our listeners. To answer your question, I'm not exactly sure to what day your father was referring. I think that was a Monday. So, in any case, I also do not see why today being Monday would be a reason to sell all of your worldly possessions and go to the holy place.
Well, that's because you're hearing our listeners, but you're not listening to them, Dr. London. Is this how you are with your patients?
Well,
they're just words on a piece of paper to you, but you're not listening to them. You're not really hearing what they have to say.
Okay, well, Cameron, do you have an opinion on what you think this holy place they're trying to go to and sell their worldly possessions?
Oh, I mean, I think it's crazy and stupid, but I'm not the one who received the note. If I received that note, don't you think I'd be acting a little differently?
Yes.
Well, okay, how would you act differently if you received the note?
If I was the one receiving the note, I would take it a little more seriously.
Okay, I'm not sure how I would take it more seriously. I guess
By doing what it is suggesting.
Oh, so
You don't think that person who left that note might know something that you don't? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying.
Okay. All right, well, I guess for now, we'll go ahead and shelf that. And maybe I'll come back to this idea of selling all my worldly possessions and finding a holy place.
You couldn't do it if you tried. You couldn't do it if you tried.
All right,
I've seen your train sets in your house.
Okay, well, those are my... It's kind of how I relax and process.
You couldn't get rid of those if you even tried. If your life depended on it. If a guy, let's say a guy who looks like me, stormed into your house and put a musket up to your face and said, "You choose. It's either you or the trains. Yeah, even your favorite one too."
Yeah, the red caboose.
You couldn't even do it.
Okay, well, are you threatening to do that? You said
No.
You're specific to say someone who looks like you.
Yeah, and sounds a lot like me as well.
And also has because you have a musket, which, in any case, thank you to this listener for the question, and we look forward to hearing from you again. Now for a tale from the clinic. We had a patient with a history of mouth and throat cancer who still had a portacath for chemotherapy, and this had been left in for years after they beat cancer. So this patient's left hand started swelling up out of nowhere, and it turned out to be an infection. So he got IV antibiotics in the hospital for it. Then he started having sharp localized pain in his back, and then his cardiologist noted a worsening heart murmur.
Hold on, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt this.
Hey!
Cameron?
Okay, I think we're good. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, was that a baby crying?
Yes. Sorry, I can't get this thing to shut the hell up, man.
Well, it's when did you acquire a baby?
Oh, I mean, it's my baby. Don't say it like that. Don't acquire a baby. It's my son. It is a person.
Okay. When did you have this child?
Oh God. Summer of, I want to say 99.
99. So it's been roughly...
Yes, summer. I'm trying to think.
20
when did
years.
Smooth by Santana came out? That was 99. Yeah, so 99.
You're saying this...
Hey! Hey, come on!
Okay. All right.
And how did you... It shouldn't be a baby anymore if it's 20 years old.
Yeah, I mean, but you should see this thing. It's a baby.
Yeah, no, I agree that the sound
It's my
of it...
son. He just turned 20 this last summer. We've named him Cambo, which is sort of like Rambo, but also Cameron.
Okay.
Also sort of like Tybo. You
Okay.
know those exercise tapes. Back then, it was kind of more relevant back then.
Huh. Okay, and you're shushing him by... sorry, is it a him, the baby?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cambo. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're shushing him by hitting him? Is that what I'm hearing?
No. I'm not touching him at all. I'm just kind of banging on things around him.
Okay. All right. I guess, anyway, back to this patient.
Yeah.
So this patient started having sharp localized pain in his back. Remember, he had come in with that portacath. His left hand started swelling. So then his cardiologist noticed a worsening heart murmur and told the patient to go see a dentist. Now, this patient had been seeing this dentist every 3 months, but the patient still obeyed, and they got an x-ray. Though he had no associated pain. I'm sorry, Cameron.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like rude or anything, but that baby is kind of loud.
Oh, is it going off again?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't even notice anymore. I just kind of like filter it out. Hey!
And this is your 20-year-old baby, because
All right, I think we're good.
that behavior
Yeah, it's sort of
seems-
like it's like a Benjamin Button situation, but instead of going, from old to young, it just kind of stays the same age forever.
and
So it's
that
not quite
age is
it's not quite a
baby.
it's not quite a reverse Benjamin Button. It's more like the last 20 minutes of Benjamin Button for 100 years.
Huh.
You
Okay,
should
well-
know this stuff. You're the doctor.
Yeah, this is a new
I'm the one who has
clinical syndrome.
to live with it.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just finish. So this patient had no associated pain.
You don't think I had dreams of playing basketball with my boy? Of throwing a baseball around with someone who wasn't stuck as a baby, Dr. London?
Yeah, I guess I'm partly just surprised that this is the first I'm hearing about it.
Well, that's a whole different thing. Typically, I've kept a blanket on him, and it was kind of like one of those like heavy weighted blankets. But he's chewed through the damn thing, so now you can hear him all the time.
Okay, so it's just, I guess you just need to go blanket shopping.
Yeah, and then once
Okay.
I get a heavy enough blanket, just throw that on top of him. Can't hear a thing.
Okay.
But yeah, just go ahead.
So this patient had no associated pain, but found that he did have an infection that had eaten away much of his maxilla, which is the upper jaw. So it turned out that the bacteria that had caused the hand infection and heart infection and the back pain was coming from his mouth. The infection had spread, and bits of it had likely flown off and blocked some arteries, which had caused the back pain. And that's why dental health can be so important to your overall health. And Cameron, that
What?
baby,
Don't call Cambo that baby. Stop that, doctor.
I just,
Hey!
it's just Cambo could probably stand to shush it a little bit. I don't
All right,
like. Can
all
you
right. I think he's good.
give a pacifier or something?
Yeah, I gave him a shoe.
Okay. And now for today's medical topic, cholesterol embolization syndrome. Now, you may have heard about clogged arteries from cholesterol buildup, but in cholesterol embolization syndrome, so-called showers of crystals originating from a buildup of cholesterol can break off during a surgery or a radiographic intervention. Clinically,
Oh yeah, that kind of stuff happens anytime I take a shower.
a cholesterol embolization
There's just
syndrome?
all sorts of stuff falling off. That's what you were saying, right?
Well, I'm saying, I guess similar to that, except that this occurs inside of your arteries. Your clogged arteries. Does that make sense?
No, I mean I think it comes from my arteries for sure. I would imagine that's where the origin is. But yeah, it just seems like anytime I step in the shower, everything is just falling off. There's just stuff everywhere, lots of debris, a lot of dust. I start coughing, and then that gets Cambo going.
I'm sorry, you're dusty whenever you get into the shower?
Yeah, there's a lot of debris in the air. I don't know what's dust. I don't know what's chalk. It's impossible to tell. But I will say at least the stench part of it definitely I think stems from my arteries for sure.
Okay. So if a patient has this cholesterol embolization syndrome, clinically, it presents with small, discrete areas of tissue ischemia with the appearance of blue or black toes. and also renal insufficiency and possibly abdominal pain or bleeding. Treatment is supportive, and you do not anticoagulate, since that can actually also be a trigger for such an episode. But rather you would focus on controlling the blood pressure. Amputation. I'm sorry?
What? So it's fine if my toes are alternating black and blue, right?
No, they shouldn't. Your toes should not turn, like, unless you're...
Right, but it's not like one is permanently black, one is permanently blue. They alternate back and forth throughout the day.
Well, are you putting your toes into black or blue, like paint or clay or mud?
No, I think it feels more like a mood ring type of thing, because it does seem tied to my, emotions. So when I'm kind of like furious, they'll turn hot red. Whereas I'm a little down on myself, baby can't shut up, keeps crying, will turn blue.
Okay.
And then when I like slam it up against anything at all, turns black.
Okay, well that does sound like it could potentially be some blocked arteries down there. That's really something to be concerned. Have you talked to your doctor about that?
I am right now.
Okay, well, sorry, to finish up, for cholesterol embolization syndrome, in terms of treatment, amputation or surgical resection, that's only needed in extreme cases. Normally, blood pressure is the thing you're working on controlling. But yeah, Cameron, you need to go to a doctor about your feet.
Okay, do you want me to come over?
No, I mean...
after we record?
No, I'd say, like, go to another... Like, go to a hospital.
Go to a real doctor is what you're saying.
I mean, go to a clinic.
That actually does make sense to me. I'm glad you're able to fess up about it a little.
All right, well, we can move on from there.
God.
Okay.
Wait, all right. I think I took care of it. Can you still hear it?
Yeah.
Okay, let me try. Let me see. Okay. Can you still hear it?
Yeah. No, it's pretty audible.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
okay, I think we're good.
Yeah, let's go ahead and move on. All right, Cameron, you said that we have a doctor here as a guest today.
We absolutely do, Dr. London, and I will say, I believe that our guest today is the most medical person that we've ever had on this show, including the host. Take it away, Dr. London.
Okay, well, that sounds kind of insulting. But we are happy to have finally another, qualified medical physician here. Dr. Venison, is that right?
Yes, thank you, Dr. London. It's a pleasure to join such an esteemed list of medical professionals on your podcast. And thank you, Cameron. Good to meet you.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Dr. Randy Venison, is that right? So what kind of doctor are you?
Well, coincidentally enough, I focused on pre-verbal gigantopediatrics when I was doing my residency. So I believe that this will lead into helping Cameron and Cambo with their medical challenges today.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So you're familiar with the clinical syndrome that Cameron's 20-year-old baby child is suffering from?
Very. It's so rare that once a case has been diagnosed, that it makes national, if not international headlines, just because of how rare it is, and also really how challenging it is for the parents. It's not easy to manage a pre-verbal 20-year-old male. It's a challenge. Cameron, I can hear the frustration in your voice, and I think you're doing a great job, though.
Yeah, it just won't shut the hell up. I wouldn't care at all if it would just shut the hell up.
we're all about building bridges.
Yeah.
That's learning to communicate.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I want to throw this thing off a bridge. I would never do that.
He's probably a little heavy.
Yeah, I'd probably fall off that bridge a lot faster. Not that I would ever do that. I want to stress that.
Well, now, it is
And I do want to say, because I know people are going to make connections here, yes, is this show on the Casey Anthony Podcast Network? Absolutely. Does that mean that everyone who comes on this show that has an annoying baby, does that mean that something's going to happen to that annoying baby? Who knows? But I'm just going to say that that connection is nothing. You can't take that connection to court if something were to happen to a certain 20-year-old baby child. Man.
Purely coincidental.
Yes.
Well, okay, well, so Dr. Venison, how would you, I guess in the case of, we've already heard sort of a description of what this clinical syndrome is. Since this is your specialty, how would you approach dealing with this problem? I don't want to say problem, I guess, because it is Cambo is a living being, but how do you approach appropriate treatment, appropriate care?
It's a multifaceted approach, Dr. London, and it's quite complex in the terminology. But what I like to do, and I did listen to some of the listeners about not going too deep into the jargon so it's accessible, is that my first recommendation would be for Cameron to try to teach Cambo infant sign language. It's something I did with my child growing up. And even though they may not be able to speak, I would guess part of the challenge from bonding with your man-child would be just a simple lack of understanding. And if he can express that he wants to play basketball or go to sleep, or if he's hungry and he has means to do it, even though he may not be able to fully articulate those needs, a simple sign language demonstration from him will help you bridge that gap.
Interesting. So what do I do? So my kid, Cambo, does not know sign language, but he does flip me off a lot. Like a lot. Even right now when he was crying and I was banging on things around him, he was flipping me off the whole time.
So he has a fully developed neofrontal cortex that he can associate anger with that symbol.
Yeah, I guess so.
Directing it towards you. So this changes things dramatically in terms of the diagnosis. So now, when was the last time he flipped you off? Give me some context to that.
Yeah, it was on the podcast like 7 minutes ago.
Okay. And let's just start with simple needs for infants. When's the last time that he's eaten? Perhaps he's hungry.
Well, when he ate that blanket, right? He ate a weighted blanket?
He did eat through a weighted blanket, yeah.
How long ago was that?
But that definitely happened a few days ago. I don't know. We don't talk about it that much. I feel like it's kind of rude to insist on knowing what people are eating. You know, everyone is sort of a little self-conscious about how they look and stuff like that.
Sure.
I wouldn't ask how much someone makes, and in the same way, I'm not going to ask, what did you have for lunch? Are you eating healthily? That's not my business.
Well, let's be respectful of Cambo's privacy in this situation. So
Absolutely.
I would suggest after we finish recording, I would set out 3 bowls of. Well, let me ask this question: Is he? How is his motor skill, articulation with utensils, or does he eat out of a dish with his face, a la maybe like farm animal?
Well, so he definitely eats off the floor, but he does that thing where he takes sort of a mouthful of food and then takes it into the other room and then drops it on the floor and then eats the piece one after another. In terms of whether or not he uses, I think you asked about his motorcycle. I paid a pretty penny for that thing, and he has not touched it once. I'm just saying.
Although you can see him right now, he is just sitting there staring at the motorcycle. So it does look like maybe there's some appreciation for it.
It seems like there's a vague interest, but get on the damn thing.
So maybe, stay with me on this one. So maybe if we tie nutrition and having his most basic needs met, that would improve the relationship. And then if we also somehow tied a reward system to the motorcycle, then you can share this wonderful experience of watching your son on the motorcycle, and he's happy because I'll use a non-medical term, his tummy's full.
And Dr. London, could you translate that for our medical community?
Yeah, well, gastric fullness, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So that does translate pretty easily to the medical community.
Dr. London, what's your take on all of this up front? You haven't spoken that much on it.
Right, well, it's kind of a new diagnosis for me. I don't run across this as much.
Lateral Benjamin Button disease?
Yeah, okay. I also wasn't familiar with that particular name for it. The other one was the preverbal something syndrome. In any case, I just like to see the approach. So it's a lot of working on the communication skills, which sounds like the big theme of it, and working on some of these motor skills, all the sort of the things that you expect anyone to work on as a baby, you know. So once they get past some of those basic human development stages, you know, getting from the point of crawling to walking to, say, riding a tricycle, all of those kinds of things are goals that you could probably have, I would assume. Dr. Venison?
Couldn't agree more, Dr. London. What you've summarized, and this really is a testament to your medical acumen. What you've just described is basically the first 3 months of specializing in this field. And I'll also send you a 200-page treatise on this. I don't want to confuse Cameron or bore the listeners with some of the more mundane medical aspects of this, but you're on the right track. And since you talk to Cameron quite frequently, within these 200 pages, as Cameron mentioned, of the Angus certified certification with this, it'll make perfect sense to you with what you should be advising him on.
That is another question. Well, I guess 2 points there. Cameron isn't the most attentive to me in terms of my explanations, but a follow-up question I had was about that Angus certification. What does that actually mean? I haven't heard of that in the medical field as far as I can recall.
Sure. Well, most people are familiar with that from, say, your neighborhood Chili's or Applebee's when they talk about their specials. So it's most commonly associated with the cut of beef on their plate. So if they're eating good in the neighborhood, so to speak. So I should note that Chili's and Applebee's are not sponsors of this podcast. This is just to relate these in layman's terms. But there is also the Angus Child Institute in upper northeast New Hampshire that focuses on some of these very, very rare but very important childhood diseases and conditions. And so I will have to admit at medical conferences when I'm presenting and putting my credentials on slide 1 of the PowerPoint and I talk about being Angus certified, I've heard every beef joke there is, but we take the Angus certification for pediatrics very, very seriously.
A lot more seriously than Dr. London takes his medical field. He's never even thrown out any of this amazing advice you've been giving me about Cambo. He's never even tried.
Well, part of that is because, I would go ahead and say entirely because I didn't know about Cambo's existence until today.
Yeah, because you never want to hear about me. Yeah, you ever thought about getting involved in your patients' lives? I've known this doctor for 5 minutes, and he already knows my relationship issues with my son. Dr. London, I've known you for 67 years.
Wow.
You've never once asked about him.
It's one of those things where usually people will mention their children.
I don't know.
And I guess
that's not on me.
It's still surprising to me. And, I guess I don't want to get into your relationship stuff now, but after the podcast, I guess, I am curious about how you came to have this child.
Oh, my girlfriend. She definitely exists, and she lives in Canada. So that's why you haven't met her. But yeah, she totally. I mean, like, oh, she's great too. She's awesome.
Yes.
She makes $1 million a year.
Yes.
She lives in Canada.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, she's awesome. But you can't talk to her. Her voice. She lost her voice recently, so you can't talk to her. Don't have a photo of her in my wallet because I left my wallet in my Uber. So.
Okay, what about your phone? There? You have a background.
So the phone, she NSA, right? Privacy, right? So she took her pictures down off social media and told me to delete all the hot steamy pictures we have or I have of her. She definitely real Canada in Manitoba.
Okay.
Not very good cell service up there. But Cameron, you had mentioned something about your, I'm using air quotes, your girlfriend, about her not being able to speak. And if one parent of a pre-verbal gigantopediatric child suffering from this doesn't speak, it makes the job so much harder for the other parent because the child only has one voice to pattern after as it's learning to speak. So you're in a tough spot, my friend.
And I'm not talking to this kid at all, except for, stop it, stop that. You're being so annoying. You don't appreciate your motorcycle. Like, there's really only maybe 3 or 4 select phrases. I've automated most of it. I kind of have a soundboard that I use for a lot of the parenting.
So you don't like. Well, when the child was first born and growing up, let's say 19 and a half years ago, did you try reading to Cambo? Did you try, talking? Were you more engaged back then?
Well, it's just like after the internet came around, it was so much harder to get books. You know what I mean? Remember, like what happened to Barnes and Noble, guys? You know what I mean? And so, like, was I able to read to him? I would have loved to have tried.
Okay, so you didn't try.
Oh man, I would have loved to have given that a shot. But it was the time, the time Y2K, right?
Yes.
A lot of technical issues back then. I recall that.
Yeah. NYPD Blue was still on, and so I was watching that.
Okay, so I guess time conflicts kept coming up for you, so you were not able to, I guess, nurture the Cambo. Is that fair to say?
Nature versus nurture. You choose one. Personally, I chose nature, and so I'm kind of letting things work themselves
Genetics
out.
take over.
Otherwise, you're at odds with each other. It's nature versus nurture.
Okay.
You can only choose one.
Okay, well, and for our listeners who aren't aware of that concept, the nature versus nurture issue is, I guess, the question of what makes up a person, their personality, their traits, their skill levels. To what extent is that nature, which is the genetic side, what they inherit from their families, from their parents, and then to what extent is it nurture, the way they're raised by either those parents or whoever they're raised by?
No. Nature versus nurture is an epic, eternal battle between everything natural versus everything nurtured. And at birth, you are given the choice to raise your child either on team nature or team nurture, which is the sword that they will be carrying for the rest of their lives.
So is this like the Twilight series where it's Team Edward versus Team, I'm forgetting the other vampire.
Well, Jacob, who was a werewolf,
That's
not a
right.
vampire.
Thank you.
We have actually established on this show previously that we are Team Charlie, which is Bella's dad. Bella's dad, single dad. He was a cop, just wanted to hang out and have a few beers. How can you not support that guy? You know what I mean?
I always root for the underdog too. That's the right team.
And so I would say in the nature versus nurture battle, Bella's dad would be, I guess, maybe like a Sunset, Dr. London.
So, I guess I'm not sure what. Oh, you mean the twilight versus breaking dawn? You think that he would be sunset, dusk?
I think the sunset is the perfect hybrid between things that are natural and things that are also nurtured. Because through all of the efforts that we've made to make this Earth hotter due to global warming, we're actually really nurturing the sun and kind of bringing us closer than ever.
Huh. I guess I'm not sure that I see that tie-in exactly. It sounds more like probably Bella's father, since he raised her and everything. That's a combination of nature and nurture is what that comes down to. But in any case, we can come back to I guess this question of where do we go from here in your raising of Cambo?
And this, I would love to be able to figure this out. I think we can work at this as a team. And figure out what to do with this hell child.
Dr. Venison, what is your take on sort of, now you're aware of a few more, you're aware about, I guess, the motor skills development of Cambo, sort of where Cambo's at?
Well, let's practice right now. Let's try a different course of therapy. So,
okay.
Let's get a bowl.
Okay.
And let's find some of Cambo's favorite kibble.
Okay.
And let's set it in front. And then,
hey, eat your baby pellets. Come on. Don't make me call your mother, who is real, lives in Manitoba, exists, but you can't talk to her voice.
Okay, got that. Okay.
Now this is a critical piece for you, Cameron. So. Take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Exhale. And then, yes. Now, give Cambo, instead of the middle finger, show him the peace sign. And we're starting to associate now food with the peace sign. This is the start of sign language. It's not the official sign for eat, but we're going to start very slow and very simple.
Oh, okay, and this is
Cambo,
tough.
Do you see it? Peace, dude.
Cambo's
Woodstock,
still
baby.
munching on that
1969. Let's get stoned, baby. No war in Vietnam. Nothing.
Well, Cambo.
He's getting angrier.
Still has his mouth full of that shoe that you gave him earlier.
We should probably have a shoeectomy.
Okay, let me.
Be delicate, though. Slowly and smooth.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think... All right, he stopped. Do I just put his face in the kibble now and just kind of let nature take its course?
He will figure it out.
Okay.
You can't lead a horse to water, and you can't lead a preverbal giganto child to eat.
It's like when a baby horse is learning how to walk. You can't just do it for them. They pick it up naturally. It's part of their instinct.
Correct. And a huge part of nature, to go back to that discussion, Cameron, is that the haircut is a vital piece of nature. It's how someone perceives themselves. When's the last time that Cambo has had a nice, tight fade haircut? Maybe it's a self-esteem issue that we're dealing with as well.
So Cambo so far has mostly kept to himself in terms of the hair situation by just sort of removing the hair piece by piece himself.
Oh. Very painful.
Are you familiar with Charles Schulz's Peanuts?
Yes.
So there's a character that's part of Charles Schulz's Peanuts, and his name is Charles. And his name is Charles Brownfield. And that character, the way his bulbous, sort of disgusting, sort of bowling ball type of head.
This Charlie Brown?
Okay, sure, yes. If you wanted to be a little informal about it, but sure. So Mr. Charles Brownfield's hair is sort of similar to Cambo's.
So we would say he's follicularly challenged.
And I do want to say that Cambo has spoken 2 words before. I have mentioned. So we've talked about verbular or whatever we were saying before, and those 2 words are good grief.
So he has an association with Charlie Brown and
I have
Peanuts.
no idea if he's watched Peanuts, no idea if he's familiar with Snoopy. I know that a lot of times when I give him his pebbles, he says, good grief.
Okay.
What did your Christmas tree look like, to assume that you celebrate the holiday? But what was it?
Oh, God, it looked like
scraggly.
Yeah, it sucked.
So I think
Terrible.
what may be happening here is that Cambo might be either living in his mind in an alternate reality that is the Peanuts Christmas special, or it might be even more extreme. He might even think he's Charlie Brown.
And his best friend carries this blanket around all the time, and it's so stupid. That blanket is disgusting. It drags on the ground.
Well, okay, I guess I don't want to interrupt this train of thought, but I feel as if we're straying from the actual way to, I guess, to fix the current issues. Because really, this is going to be sort of a daily thing, isn't it? In terms of fixing the approach to Cambo, like it's sign language,
daily if not hourly. Yes.
Yeah. So it's going to be sign language. It's going to be, I guess, focusing on phrases similar to good grief from the Peanuts. I guess learning to try to kick a ball.
Okay. Correct. Yes,
Okay.
you're going to need a football, and I would construct a psychiatrist's office out of milk crates so that when Cambo is talking to you, that you are the psychiatrist and you are in. Let's
Cambo does
construct
not
a familiar world.
anything you're suggesting at all.
It's new.
He's getting madder. All right, let me try. Peace, dude. I'm doing the peace signs.
Okay.
Hey, what's up, man? Looking for peace, not war, homie. What's up, dude?
Well,
What's up, man?
okay. Well, I think at this point we are going in circles a little bit. So it's maybe a good time to bring it to a
Pet
close.
sounds is better than Sergeant Pepper's, dude. Oh, okay. I think that did it.
Maybe he's a Beatles fan.
Well, I think stressing the importance that Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys was better than Sgt. Pepper's, that seemed to agree with him.
Maybe he knows about more than we think. In any case, though, I still think it's probably
He's flipping me off again, though, so never mind.
probably a good time.
This
to
is
end
going to be a
things then.
long road. A
Yeah.
long road, Cameron. But I'm here to help. Feel free
Okay.
to contact me.
Well, yeah, and speaking of which, Dr. Venison, is there any way that listeners could follow you afterwards? Do you have social
There-
media, anything like that?
Yes, there absolutely is. We love to hear from patients, potential patients, and especially in this very well-connected age. And I'm calling up our website now so they can read the address and interact with not only your listeners, but Cambo. And so what I would like you to do is we'll send you to the Venison and Poblano practice. I'm a partner with Dr. Chad Poblano.
Okay.
And if you go to venisonandpoblanomedicine.weebly.com, and I'll email you this so people don't have to pull off the side of the road and safely transcribe this while they're listening to the podcast.
Our listeners can do both. Yeah, if you're hearing this right now, just pull up your phone. If you're driving, put in the address, save it to your bookmarks, maybe scroll through the website a little bit.
Well, no,
Absolutely.
I don't want anyone to get injured while driving. Texting and browsing while driving.
Okay, if you are going under 70, okay? If you're going over 70, then yes, slow down under 70, then you can use your phone safely. But yeah, I'm sorry, Dr. London.
Sure, and look for oncoming traffic, and probably during daylight hours. But yes, venison is spelled as you would expect from the dried deer meat, and poblano as the pepper. Coincidentally, and purely random, it sounds like items on an appetizer menu at Twin Peaks, but that's just purely coincidental.
Oh, okay.
Again, going back to like the Angus certification, there's a lot of just random coincidences that, you know, we have to deal with. That's just part of caring so much for our patients.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
I would say that, you know, to be fair, my name sounds kind of made up. Like someone just looked at a map and then thought of one of the more common last names. You know, Dr. London Smith doesn't sound that real either. So I understand that struggle, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and the most important thing, Dr. London, you'll agree with me on this one, is as a medical professional, believability counts for a lot. And so if we sound believable, then our patients will believe us.
Well, I mean, just like no one has ever had felt the need to question the existence of my girlfriend who lives in Canada, because there's no reason to question it because it sounds so believable because it is real.
Right. Okay,
And
well,
Manitoba is in Canada.
Yep. No, so there's no reason to question it or to try to Google her or look her up in any way or anything like that.
okay.
I'm sold.
So, Dr. Venison, any other details you need to share, or?
This has been an absolute pleasure, gentlemen. And
Okay.
Cameron, just one day at a time, my friend.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
All right.
And Dr. London, I'll see you at a conference soon, I hope.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about preverbal the infant gigantism, something to that effect.
Giganto-pediatrism.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
right. All right, well, thank you to Dr. Venison for being on the show. Thank you to Cameron, our producer. Thank you to Digital in the house.
You can't lead a horse to water, and you can't lead a preverbal giganto child to eat.
My name is drlondonsmith.com. This has been the Jock Doc Podcast.
See ya.
You keep plodding through the snow. One step at a time, you tell yourself. Yet you can't help but sneak in an extra skip once in a while, owing to the chipper nature of the situation. Yes, sir, after 8 straight nights of searching through this avalanche-prone icy wasteland, you have finally found a bona fide walnut! And a whole one. And then proceeded to dig a hole and bury it so that the tree's underground hands can find it again. Yes, sirree, Bob, plowing through all this snow barefoot sure has been worth it. And you know what else is worth it? A 5-star review of the Jock Dog Podcast. So go ahead and leave one of those right from your phone, and be sure to leave it a review in which you detail what kind of nut you would like to find while walking through the snow without shelter for many days in a row. And be sure to text a friend or a hated one our handy website, jockdogpodcast.com, so that they too can have the chance to write a 5-star review. If you were even remotely displeased with anything on the podcast, be sure to give us a very angry shout out on social media at JockDoc Podcast. Thanks for listening.